Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Global Green Podcast, where we break down the pros and cons of environmental policy decisions. I'm your host, Brett, and today we're joined by Jessica Lee, who is bringing in some insights on the recent closure of New York State's Indian Point nuclear reactor. Now, Jessica, can you give me an overview of what's happened?
Yes, of course, and thanks for inviting me, Brett. Earlier this year, Unit 3 of Indian Point shut down, marking the nuclear power plant's permanent closure. Since the 70s, a quarter of New York City's electricity has been provided by Indian Point. However, in 2017, an agreement was made between the state government, social interest group Riverkeeper, and the owner Entergy to shut down the plant by 2021, which is 14 years ahead of schedule.
So, how is the electricity deficiency being replaced then?
It's been replaced by fossil fuels, actually, which has increased the state's carbon emissions by 29%.
So, we've just replaced renewable with non-renewable energy, which isn't sustainable given that the harvest rate for fossil fuels is way higher than its growth rate, pretty much non-existent in our human lifetime. To me, that doesn't sound like a good policy decision. Why shut the plant down at all?
So, despite the clean energy, the plant negatively affected the nearby river ecosystem. Every year, the cooling system sucks in and kills over 1 billion fish and organisms. Riverkeeper argued that the production of clean energy didn't justify killing any fish, which I say is a very consequentialist view of the situation.
Okay, I understand killing animals is objectively bad, but I personally have a much more utilitarian view on this. To me, the cost of some dead fish is much less than the cost of climate change from increased carbon emissions.
That's a very fair point. And however, though, another key player in shutting down the plant were actually safety advocates who argued that a nuclear meltdown would be devastating on nearby cities. Riverkeeper also argued that there was radioactive leakage from the plant, although there hasn't been actual evidence of this. Therefore, any negative externalities I argued here are hypothetical. Despite this, though, these arguments were very successful in turning members of the public against Indian Point.
Well, we hear about meltdowns because they're big and don't happen often, although there are lots of small incidents with natural gas that don't get any news coverage. Is there some way we can compare the safety of nuclear and natural gas?
There actually is. We can measure the number of deaths for each type of energy production by taking the number of deaths from accidents and pollution divided by the terawatts of energy the source provides. So for nuclear, it comes down to 7/10 of a death, which includes death from radiation poisoning. This is comparable to water, wind, and solar. However, natural gas has a value of 2.8, which is 40 folds higher than these renewable resources.
So, from a quantitative perspective, nuclear is much safer. It sounds like the safety advocates are exemplifying a NIMBY problem here. From a broad perspective, the plant is a safer and cleaner form of energy. But if the plant were to melt down, there would be a large negative effect on the nearby population. To me, it's in the social interest of New Yorkers to bear the risks associated with the plant.
Yes, and these environmental and safety considerations make shutting down Indian Point so controversial. You can do cost benefit analyses all you want, but we often underestimate the power of social interest groups and their transfer seeking abilities. Riverkeeper, which is essentially a social interest group for the environment, was the biggest player in pressuring the government to in turn pressure Energy to shut down early, all because the group didn't want this power plant in their area. So in the future, we'll have to continue to see these groups put pressure on government regarding renewables, which I think is something we'll continue to have to keep an eye on.
I definitely agree. But it also looks like we're out of time for now. Thanks again for joining us today, Jessica.
Thank you, Brett.